Wes Winkel is president of the Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association. Mr. Winkel, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start by clearing the air on your group's role in this buyback program. Your group, the CSAAA, tweeted that you haven't collected or shared any info with the government and that you haven't received any compensation. So let's just start with whether you can clarify what your work is with the federal government on these banned firearms and what funding is involved.
Yes, for sure. So we entered into discussions last year with the federal government regarding the possibility of representing our industry in the industry buyback initiative from the government. We were looking to liaison between the manufacturers, distributors, and retailers and the federal government to try to help administer the buyback program as far as collecting data, negotiating process and prices. That was our role, and we advised them that we're a volunteer board of directors and we don't really have the administrative staff to deal with that. So we said that if we were going to hire and have to get some people involved, that we would need a little bit of budget, and that's where the contract came in to assist us with the administrative expenses of administering this type of agreement. And
that's around $700,000?
Max to a maximum. At this point, we have not received any payment, and it is our understanding that that's the maximum amount of budget allocation we have.
All right. Now, the Public Safety Minister says he's pleased with this arrangement, and I want to play you what Marco Mendicino told our Michael Serapio yesterday, and then get your reaction.
Yes.
It is a program that does not have precedent. It is a program that is national in scale, and it is a program that will require good faith partnerships within industry, which is why we reached out to the CSAAA, but as well with law enforcement and with gun owners themselves. And we're going to do this work in good faith with all of those folks.
All right, so the minister says the government has signed a contract in good faith, but how do you and other dealers feel about this arrangement?
Well, it's a real catch-22, and it's a tough situation we're in. We have our backs up against the wall, and the reason is that these firearms were prohibited back in May of 2020, and our membership vehemently opposes the prohibition in general. We don't believe that the program is the best use of tax dollars. We obviously don't believe in the prohibition. We believe that these firearms were imported and distributed safely throughout our community to licensed and vetted individuals. So the problem now that we have is that this inventory has been tied up in our businesses for 3 years since the prohibition, and we're paying to store and insure these firearms. And at some point, we need to have movement on the file. So the discussion amongst the industry was, we're better to be a part of the discussions rather than being dictated the parameters around how the program moves forward. The program has many challenges. Just to react to Minister Mendicino yesterday, he said a national program, but right now we have the Saskatchewan and Alberta Firearms Act that prohibits the collection and destruction of these items. So, there's a lot of challenges, and we're happy to have a rational conversation around it. Even though we're not happy with the legislation or with the order in council, we still do believe that we have to follow the law of the land. And even though we don't always agree with it, it still is the law of the land. And how do we move forward in a reasonable manner?
Okay, I do want to ask you, though, about how many weapons we're talking about here, how many the dealers have firearms on their shelves not being sold because they're banned. The minister's saying that there's about 11,000 guns, parts, and components that have been identified. Is that the number?
It absolutely is not. And we had a conversation yesterday with the minister after those numbers were put forward. The numbers that he's referring to are the amount of firearms that are registered to the Canadian businesses across Canada. And that number we do believe to be somewhere around 11,000 total. Where we really see this program balloon, and what's a little disingenuous, is that there's many non-restricted firearms, which of course do not require registration in the country of Canada, that are on dealer shelves that were prohibited. There was 1,800 makes and models prohibited, and many of those were non-restricted. And those items have a much higher volume of sales, and therefore a much higher volume of inventory across the country. So even though there's 11,000 registered that are easy to identify because they know exactly where they are, this is where we come in as far as trying to figure out what the dealers have on their shelves in the non-restricted category. And that number will definitely dwarf the 11,000.
Okay, and I want to ask you about the financial aspect of this for the dealers themselves. Yesterday, your group also tweeted concern with the way that those firearms might be valued or appraised in terms of the buyback program. What is the amount that you're expecting the government to pay dealers here?
Well, this is the thing. When you're dealing with 1,800 makes and models, you can imagine if you're not familiar with firearms, you can kind of go into a car situation. But obviously, a Ferrari is not worth the exact same amount as a Honda Civic. And we have the same situation in the firearms. We have 18,000 unique makes and models, all which had a different retail price. And initially, the government was just trying to do a category saying if you have a mid-sized sedan, you're going to get this much money, and if you have a sports car, you're getting this much money. Well, we've indicated that there's no way that's a fair process, and all that's going to mean is that either people get way overcompensated and taxpayers take it on the nose, or people get way undercompensated, which is, of course, our great concern. So, we have been willing to offer our expertise to let the people know what these firearms are actually worth. In some of the situations, in some of these safari guns that were, safari hunting rifles that were prohibited, the values can be very, very high. Some of these firearms sell in the tens and 20s of thousands of dollars or higher. So there's a great deal of discrepancy amongst what these guns are worth, and we're trying to just provide our expertise as to the value of these guns and to the procedure going forward. It's one of those situations where we've complained in the past about not being consulted, so now that we are being consulted, we want to offer our expertise.
All right, we'll have to leave it for there. Wes Winkel, president of the CS AAA, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it.